All right, everybody, welcome back to 5enses. I'm sitting down with Charles Matheus, the author of Leadership and Masculinity, Embracing New Strengths. We're going to be talking about masculinity and leadership, and who better than do Charles Matheus? How you doing?
Yeah, thank you so much for being. What am I saying? Thank you so much for being here. I'm not the podcast host today. I'm the guest.
Yes.
Thanks for having me here.
No problem, Charles. How is it usually you're interviewing people? How is it being the interviewee?
Yeah. So for people that don't know, my wife and I run 3 different podcasts. We're up to 5 different podcasts at once. I do LinkedIn Live interviews all the time now. So I guess I'm having a little trouble making the transition right now to being a guest. But I love talking about this topic, and it's a great opportunity to talk on a local webcast about something that kind of came out of Prescott, this book. Yeah.
Right, and you are a bestseller. Is that correctly? This book?
Yeah, it hit number 1 in HR, human resources on Amazon, and it also was in the top 3 new releases in men's health. I was right up there with Terry Crews, who released his book Tough. I was giving him a run for his money for a while there. He was actually advertising his book on my page. So, it was good, and it was great to see. If you go to Amazon.com and you look at the men's health section, there's a lot of stuff about, eating paleo and working out really hard and swinging kettlebells at one another and how to get girls. And then there's Terry Crews and I talking about, okay, well, let's look really at what masculinity can be and not just have it in this narrow box about, being ripped, eating paleo, getting sex, making money. Let's talk about what it means to be a full human being who happens to identify as masculine.
Exactly. So you're talking about the other ones are about alpha male stuff, right? Which I don't appreciate because I've dealt with some alpha males in my life, and I just think they're, not the greatest role models, but that's to be determined.
Right.
But I like it because this leads to vulnerability, which in your book and just knowing what you've done for this great community over the years you've been here it's all about being vulnerable and doing the work that's within.
Right.
So how did this come about, the leadership and masculinity? It's a very interesting mix.
It is, yes. So, part of the story is me coming up through wilderness leadership and learning to lead in a way that's not about alpha male, not about my way or the highway, but is about collaborative leadership, almost always in a team. You guys do team teaching a lot at North Point High School. Working with the whole person, not just the brain, but emotional, somatic, the whole circle of what it means to be a real person. So I learned that kind of leadership, and then I brought that into my work at Boys to Men as the program director and working with these teens and helping these teen boys relearn their relational capacities, relearn what it means to be curious, to be emotional, to ask for help, all those sorts of things. And then I got promoted to executive director, and that was a disaster. Mm-hmm. I knew about the Peter Principle, right? You might have heard the idea that the Peter Principle says we all get promoted up into our level of incompetence.
Yep.
And that's where we stick, right? And I knew about the Peter Principle, so I was really worried that was going to happen to me. And I didn't want that for myself. I didn't want that for this organization that I cared so much about. So I poured myself into all these technical aspects of being a nonprofit leader, budgeting and fundraising and all this stuff. And I forgot everything I learned about relational capacities. And I started micromanaging my employees. I was literally arguing with my employees about their dotting their I's and crossing their T's and their capitalization on their reports to the board. And I was I feel really terrible. Nobody's working as hard as I am. Nobody's supporting me. And I was always in this victim mode about nobody was taking care of what I wanted to be taken care of. Unfortunately, my board believed in me enough to say, dude, this isn't working. And I ended up at one of those special board meetings. Nobody wants to go to a special board meeting, but fortunately the result of the special board meeting was that they got me some transformational coaching. And that helped me. That coaching involved, meditation to calm my reactions down so I wasn't so off the handle. It involved doing some really deep soul work around what is it, Charles, that you really want to give to the world? What do you want them to say at your funeral? What kind of eulogy do you want? And that reconnected me to a deeper purpose. Like, what am I really here to do? And that enabled me to, frankly, go back to my team and say, I messed up, you guys. I've not been the leader that you deserve, and I need your help. So I got strong enough to be vulnerable. And you talked about the alpha male, and we were joking about guys swinging kettlebells at one another. And that's a definition of strength. But what I've noticed throughout my life is that when I show up in the ways that the man box, which we'll talk about in a second, which is the kind of the norms, the old outmoded norms of manhood, talk about you're supposed to be what? You're supposed to be strong and silent. You're not supposed to be emotional. You're not supposed to have long hair. Not supposed to wear pink, right? Mm-hmm. All of those rules about manhood. Go for the money. Go for the women. If you're not in that box, then you're nothing. You're a cuck. You're a, whatever. All kinds of nasty words, right? But my life doesn't show up that way. When I find this courage, the strength to be vulnerable, I get relationship. I get support. And out of that, we get all kinds of things. When I have a relationship support, I can do almost anything. When I express curiosity, I get more information that I can work with, right? When I express my emotions, I actually get more clarity about what I want and what's important to me. Well, if I'm just stuffed down, I don't even know who the heck I am.
Right, you're just going to explode if you keep all that down.
Right. And if I express my emotions and I can make connections with other people, emotions are the universal language, right? So all of those things that we were told growing up weren't strong, that were for girls, that were for sissies, whatever. All of those things that were stigmatized by the old traditional norms of masculinity, I actually feel really freaking powerful when I do them. And that's what I saw with those boys that we mentored. That's what I saw with the men that I worked with in the Mankind Project when they were able to shed all of those dumb rules, those playground rules. They emerged more powerful and more capable. So that's why I call the subtitle of the book is Embracing New Strength.
Mm-hmm. No, I really like everything you say, because especially in the 21st century when gender is so abstract these days, it's hard when you put that gender in a box. And I've definitely felt like with you, it's like I've never felt in that mold of being that. And I've definitely been told everything that you just mirrored to me, I was been told.
Yeah.
If people don't know it, you did amazing work as executive director of Boys to Men. You transformed a bunch of these kids' lives. Like we just graduated a few from North Point, and they grew a lot. Because I think you left probably 4 years ago and they were freshmen. It was Ethan and Benji. And just seeing their progression 4 years and understanding what that is and how that helped them become more vulnerable, but more in the direction. So I just want to say thank you for all your work.
Thank you for mentioning those two young men in particular. They're a couple of favorites of mine.
Yeah, because you do this mentoring circles, and they do this crazy thing called ROPA, which goes really into all the sword work and the masks and everything.
Yeah.
I saw
it was a rite of passage weekend.
Because there's not a lot of opportunities for men these days of rite of passage. Like we don't need to go into like what would be the man rite of passages, but so with this book, you say who's, like when I was reading it was like, who's this for? And you kind of explain to any man that's in this man box. So I'd like to know, like, what is the man box from your point of view?
Yeah. So just to explain kind of where the term came from. So the term came from Paul Kivel was working with men in the Bay Area trying to prevent domestic violence and household violence. So it was a violence prevention program, and he was working with these guys, and they finally were saying to him, like, you're telling us to not be violent. Let's talk about what's happening to us in our lives. And so they were describing the violence that they were facing on the playground, in the schoolyard, in the alleyways, in their own homes. And out of that came this discussion of like, well, where is this violence coming from? And it's like, well, that's how you got to act like a man. And so with Paul and these guys in the Bay Area in Oakland described the act like a man box that encompasses all those things. Be straight, not gay. Be confident, not curious. Be bold, not shy. Dominate women, dominate children, dominate people of different color, dominate people of a different sexuality. All of those things were part of the man box. Don't show your feelings. And then Tony Porter did a great TED Talk, and I encourage people to look up that TED Talk. Tony Porter did a TED Talk about the man box and about his experience with it. And now Mark Green, one of my podcast partners, talks about kind of man box culture, that it's not just what happens to boys, but it's really our whole culture is kind of built around this definition, especially as we are still stuck in this gender binary. You mentioned that the understandings of gender is getting a little more fluid, at least among the younger generation, right? But so part of the man box is that there is a binary. And I think we're coming to understand that maybe that binary is not true, right? So again, man box is all those rules. And then it's the processes by which we police one another into it. Don't be a pussy.
Yep.
Don't be a sissy. Cut your hair, you jerk. Like, love you, bro. Fuck you. I don't know. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Love you, bro. You suck. All of that, like back and forth about this is as close as I'm going to get to you. This is as emotional I'm going to be, but don't go any further because then that's too much. Don't do that. That's not right. What are you doing with that girl? She's not all right for you, right? All that policing. So we police one another. We kind of, take it on ourselves and kind of have this internalized man box. I better not do that. I better not wear that. I better not behave that way. I better not let my voice get too high. I better not dance too fluidly, right? All those things get into us. And it shows up for leaders in that when I talk to leaders in business and nonprofit, many of these male leaders talk about putting aside their authenticity when they leave their car in the parking lot to go into work. They put away a bunch of themselves and they admit that it's kind of the softer, more receptive part, the part that listens better, the part that can play with their kids, the part that can be there for their partner or their wife. They put that all aside because we've been told that leadership is this hyper masculine way of being. My way or the highway. Do what I say. I know everything. I'm the know-it-all leader. And you keep mentioning the 21st century, and that just doesn't fly.
No.
In the 21st century. Nobody wants to work for somebody like that anymore.
No, either both genders, you don't want to work with somebody who's just going to be top down.
Nope.
You have to have a democracy amongst your staff. But I guess my question is, was it lonely on top? Like, you're the executive director.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, in the story that I tell, I got really lonely because, like I said, if I'm going to tell you how to capitalize and use punctuation on your report, you're going to rebel. You're not going to be like, hey, I really like Charles. Let's hang out with him more. No, that dude was not okay. So yeah, I isolated myself, and that isolation caused me to double down on trying to control my employees even more because I could feel them pulling away from me. And I was siloing all the information about the budget and the fundraising because I didn't feel confident about what I was doing about it. So I built the wall that isolated myself. And when I was able to, as you said, be vulnerable and say, you guys, I'm fucking up. This isn't right. I'm not treating you the way I want to treat you. By breaking that wall down and then asking for help, that was the real key. I need your help to be a better leader. Then all of this support came pouring back. And over the next couple of years, we tripled our impact. I quadrupled the amount of fundraising I was able to do. We expanded in more and more schools. We helped start a girls program as well. So all of the energy that came out of that collaboration was only possible because I said, I'm lonely. I'm terrible. I'm not sleeping. I'm eating too much. All this stuff was making me miserable.
Right. And it's so funny how you describe the man box. And to me, it looks like, okay, let's not be our authentic selves. Let's be a robot or vanilla.
Yep.
And you're missing the empathy piece, of the employees or other people.
Yeah.
And then when we're talking about just being a man now, I feel like we get mixed signals in society. How about you? What's the status of masculinity? Because we're in the area of #MeToo, so there's more women, which is great. I'm an ally. They should have equal access to everything.
Yep.
But then where does that, in your perception, us guys, where does that leave us?
I think you're right. I mean, a lot of people do feel like there's a lot of mixed signals going on, and we hear some pushback and resistance from a lot of men, even on, comments on my book, or I'll put out something on Twitter saying, hey, wouldn't it be great if women had access to leadership opportunities? Like all of a sudden I'm being called a cuck, and I'm like, wait a minute. All I said was that women should have access to leadership opportunities. Now you're calling me a beta or telling me that you had sex with my wife last night or whatever. I'm like, whoa, a lot of reaction. And men, I do empathize with men. I never use the term toxic masculinity because so many people take that to mean that masculinity is toxic. I am 100% in favor of your masculinity, my masculinity, however it shows up, so long as it's not hurting somebody else. I'm in favor of masculinity. Awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm in favor of expanding the definition of masculinity so it can include being an awesome, nurturing dad, being the kind of partner who can listen and empathize, as you say. So, but a lot of men do feel under attack. And they feel like they're being, and I think part of my empathy for that is that we get put in that man box at such a young age. Judy Chu, a researcher from Stanford, was interviewing 4 and 5-year-olds. I talk about it in the book. 4 and 5-year-old boys who were making a conscious decision to join up with the mean team, to basically enter the man box with the mean boys, or stay behind with their slightly weird friends and the girls. And it's like, yeah, you can have belonging and safety and status over here, or you can have authenticity and connection over here. And at 4 and 5, man, it makes sense to make that choice. So I think that most of us men, over and over again, have made a choice for belonging, security, status, rather than, and we haven't really been given an opportunity to have both, to be able to have status, to be able to have security and authenticity. Mm-hmm. We haven't had the opportunity to have our masculinities lifted up and praised while being receptive, while being caregivers, while being curious, while supporting women. Like I said, I support a woman on Twitter. All of a sudden, there's something wrong with me, according to the manosphere. So, yeah. So I have a lot of empathy for men who feel like they're under attack. And what I talk about in the book is, okay, don't jump out of the man box right away. Like, take some time to build awareness about yourself, do some journaling, do some work with your emotions, build awareness about other people, start following women and people of color and LGBTQ folks on social media, read about them, expand your circle of compassion to include a circle of compassion that can include all of your complexity, as well as the complexity of other people. Don't take a huge run and leap, or don't go backwards and get defensive. Just take a breath, man. It's going to be okay.
Recently I've been looking into more yogi practices, and they're saying that the universe is all the reactions. So if me and you have a conflict, the reaction that you get out of me is my reality.
Yeah.
And when you say defensive, I want to touch on that because a lot of people don't listen. They hear those trigger words and then they attack or they get on the defensiveness,
Right.
And also what you're talking about, I just feel like it's a facade. Like, going to my experience, I didn't really fit in with like the jocks, even though I love sports up until I had cancer, Then I went into like more of the creative endeavors.
Yep.
I just wish that men would just stop being the facade or buying into the facade. Yeah. Because I really like, if you talk about toxic masculinity, there's some truth to it, but also, why do I as a man have to ask for help, and that's weak considered to other men?
Right.
Because that's the most powerful gift or powerful strength you have. Is, hey, I need some help right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And that's step 2 in the book. Step 1, build awareness. Step 2 is ask for help. And that is a revolutionary act for men because it automatically is outside of the man box. Mm-hmm. And it immediately starts building community, especially if you can ask for help of another man. Ask for somebody to mentor you. Go to another man and say, I saw this thing on Twitter the other day and I didn't get it. Help me understand this. Or start off a little simply and just go ahead and ask for directions. I don't know, crazy idea. But yeah, asking for help, expressing that curiosity, expressing that vulnerability, I think, again, our strength, right? If you are so confident in yourself and your authenticity that your willingness to go to somebody else and say, I don't understand this, or I could use some help around this, that tells me that you are grounded. You're planted. You don't care whether I'm going to judge you or think you're not good enough. And then if you ask the right person for help, the side benefit is you get relationship. And again, a broader and broader circle of understanding and compassion.
Mm-hmm. And part of your book I want to touch on too is the soul work. Now,
Yeah.
you and I have worked together in the past, and we are similar with like that adventure ed.
Yeah.
Could you talk to our audience about like the soul work and what is that, and what does that kind of like lead to in your life?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So step 3, I should say, in the book, after you've built awareness and asked for help, is to take some concrete action, and lots of different examples of concrete action in the book that can be everything from tweaking your business processes to, doing more meditation so you can lower that reactivity and create a little freedom in between your stimulus and reaction. But one of the concrete actions that I like the most, because it's made such a big difference in my life, is soul work. And by soul work, I just mean doing the kinds of self-reflection and kind of recreation at a really fundamental level. You and I were talking before we recorded. I'm about to take a big cross-country move. I'm moving from Arizona to New York. And that's going to take a different kind of person. I'm going to recreate who I am instead of just imagining myself as this static person. Soul work can also entail working with dreams, which I think is really, really powerful. It can entail working with archetypes, Jungian archetypes. Some folks talk about the 4 male archetypes: the king, magician, lover, and warrior. There's other archetypes out there as well. And it's all based on this creating the ability to have an observing ego that's over here going like, let me watch Charles do his thing. And what is he doing? What energy is showing up for him? Just being a little bit of a third person observer of one's own life. And especially when it comes to working with archetypes, I feel like now I've got a whole bunch of internal helpers that I can ask for help. I can ask my warrior for help when I'm like, oh man, I don't want to write this newsletter today. I'm worn out. And it's like, help me out, warrior. And the warrior shows up. The warrior doesn't know what to do, but if you can put him in the right direction and ask him for help, he'll get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that ego is, our brain is the best gift that we have, but I also feel it's like our worst enemy, because like, for me, like if there's a business transaction or like somebody like messes up, you just dwell on that, and you've got to stop dwelling on that,
Yep.
So with your book, what do you hope to accomplish with your readers, the people that pick up your book? What is your overall message for them?
Yeah. I'm really looking for the opportunity to build a community of change makers, nonprofit leaders, folks working in the B Corp space, certified B Corps, who are ready to tackle the big existential problems that we're facing as a species. You and I were talking about climate change and how it's going to affect, Arizona, upstate New York, the whole world. And this is an all hands on deck moment for the human species. And we can just keep doing the same thing we've been doing. We can stay in the mad box. We can keep our facades, our masks on, or we can free up more capacity, free up more authenticity for ourselves, the ability to ask for help, the ability to build coalitions of people, the ability to be creative and pivot. We saw some really successful pivots during COVID. Others not so successful, right? People kind of stuck in the old ways. So I really think that for men in particular who want to be part of a tremendous change for the human species, that looking at how our gender definition, our definition of masculinity either inhibits or promotes creativity, connection, vulnerability, win-win, power with, those are the things that are going to get us through this crisis.
I think so, for sure. So we're running out of time.
Yeah.
My last thing I do with some people, not all guests, but you're moving to my hometown.
Yeah.
Not my hometown, but home state, Buffalo, New York, Utica, New York. Everything's great in New York. Go Bills, right? So that has nothing to do with anything, really, nothing. But I picked this up in Japan. This is a Durum doll, all right?
Okay.
And in the Shinto religion, on New Year's, they'll fill an eye in and make an intention. So I think you're the third person I'm going to ask to put your hand on there, and then on our show, make an intention, because you're going to be making a huge move. Yeah. And plus, with this book, you're going to touch a lot of people's lives. So hopefully inspire people to pick this up and become the leaders that you want to be, right?
Yeah.
So what's your intention, Charles?
So my intention going forward, and especially moving to upstate New York, is to take a breath and listen. I'm like carrying so much excitement and enthusiasm with me to my hometown, to my new hometown. And I've just got to like listen to what's there, listen to who's there. I'm going to learn so much from the people that are there already.
Nice.
Thank you for that opportunity. Ritual is part of soul work. That was a beautiful ritual. Thank you.
Hey, no problem.
Yeah.
You know I'm all about soul work.
Yeah.
So thank you for being our guest. Can you tell our audience where they can pick up your book or maybe some of your podcasts?
Yep. Great. Well, you can go on Amazon. You can find the book on Amazon. You can search for my name, Charles Matheus. Last name is Matheus. And as a special gift and a kind of an enticement for 5enses viewers, I've created a little splash page. So if you go to charlesmathews.com/senses, and I spell it with an S, not a 5, charlesmathews/senses, you can get a free chapter from the book downloaded for free. So go check that out.
Yes, go check it out. And Charles, thank you. It's a pleasure. And again, you've done so much great work for our community. And I hope that you can continue to inspire people in Utica.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the 5enses webcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Remember, you can get all your science, culture, and art information at 5ensesmag.com. Pick it up in one of your favorite local restaurants or stores, and also visit us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.